This podcast is going to talk about how to add a toe lift functionality to a reverse foot system. So, before we get into the meat and potatoes of this podcast, let's talk about what I have in my scene real fast. It's pretty much just a standard IK leg. I can move it around. I have my pull vector already attached to it. And I have a pretty standard reverse foot system, nothing super fancy. I can do banking, I can do the foot roll if I wanted to. So, with my icon selected, I have that functionality set up. So I can rock back onto the heel, I can press onto the ball of the foot, and then progress all the way to the tip of the toe. And this is a really nice system for animators. It's really nice for animating walk cycles, and all of mine love having this type of system. The only thing that really frustrates my animators is when I don't give them a way to sort of curl the toe, the tip of the toe. They can't bend this upward, they can't flex. And inherently that's because we have an IK system and I can only bend in one direction with IK. When I want to go in the opposite direction, I'm talking more of an FK motion now. So how do we get this FK functionality onto our IK system? Right, that's inherently what we're trying to do here, is add another layer on top of our system. Well, to do that, I really want to go back to my base joints. So let's go ahead and hide our reverse foot system. And let's hide the geometry too, since that's probably just going to get in the way for right now. So right now, this is what I started with. This was my original leg and foot system. And really the only thing that I want to do is change this tiny little portion of my rig. I want you guys to have different functionality. Well, we like the functionality that we have right now. It's a good base. We just want to add something to it. So to do this, let's go ahead and just duplicate these joints. So I'm going to hold Command D to duplicate and then press Shift P to take that outside of my hierarchy. So if I expand this, I have this little effector on the end. That's because on my original leg, I already have IK handles set up. When I duplicate, Maya duplicates everything that's inside of that hierarchy, but this effector really isn't affecting anything. He's just floating in space, sort of there, taking up space in my outliner. So this is totally safe to go ahead and delete. So now I'm left with a clean joint chain, and all I need to do is make sure that my naming is good. So we're no longer part of the leg here. We're going to be the toe system. And since this is the start of my toe, I'll use a 0. And then it's not leg, it's toe again, and that will be 1. Cool, so now I have free floating joints. They don't actually attach back into my rig yet, so let's go ahead and set that up. I'm going to hold Command G to group my joint chain, and then do DV to snap that pivot to the root of my joints. Awesome, so instead of group 1, this is going to be my left toe pad. Sweet. So it's still not integrated into my rig yet. It's not going to follow anything. So let's make sure we get that done. I want to go to my joints, specifically my reverse foot joints, because that's what's moving my original chain. And I want to make sure that I take the toe of my reverse foot and constrain this toe pad. So constrain parent. Cool. So now whatever my toe does, my toe system will follow. And so we can see here that we're following cool, and if I select the joint, I now have the ability to rotate the tip of my toe. Sweet. That is not what my geometry is listening to though. So let's go ahead and set that up. We'll go back to the icon, make sure that we're in a default pose, and I want to frame this geometry, and I want to get rid of that constraint. Instead of the original bind joint that I had, the ball joint of my foot system, I now want the geometry to listen to this toe joint. So I'll select the toe joint, go to my toe geometry, constrain parent. So now when I do the foot roll, awesome, we're still following along good, but it now listens to this FK motion that I have added into my rig. Sweet, so we have the system now. We just need to give the animator a way to use it. We don't want them selecting components, right? We don't want them coming in and saying, yes, I'm going to rotate this joint. We want them messing with controls or attributes that we give them. So let's go ahead and add an attribute. We'll select the foot icon since that's where all of my attributes are at the moment. And we'll go ahead and edit by adding an attribute. And I'll call this toe lift. I'll make sure that it's a float so they can get a nice range of motion. And I'm going to do -10 to 10, and I'll default that at 0. And I'll go ahead and click OK. And there we go. I have my attribute, and it goes from -10 to 10. Sweet. I just need to hook it up to something now. So in animate, I'm going to go to set driven key, and I'm going to set a key. Since the attribute is what I want to manipulate, that's what's going to drive a motion inside of my rig, that's what's going to be the driver. So I'm going to load the left leg IK icon as my driver, and then what are we affecting? Well, when I rotate the joint, that's when I get my motion. So that's who I want to drive. That is going to be my driven. You are the guy who's affected. Specifically, this rotate Y channel. When I rotate in Y, that's when I get the motion that I'm looking for. Cool, so when the attribute toe lift is at 0, I want my toe 0 bind rotate Y to also be at 0. Alright, so I have everything selected, and I'm going to hit key. So that sets my default key. Let's go ahead and change toe lift to 10, and we'll go back to our toe joint, and then we'll rotate him up in a positive direction. So I'll say a nice round even number, we'll say -50, and key. Now I've set my max, let's go ahead and set them in, -10, and we'll go back to the joint, and since it was -50 last time, we'll do the inverse of 50. And I'll set key, so let's test it out. When I'm at 0, the rotate is at 0. When I go positive, the toe goes up. When I go negative, the toe goes down. So let's see that with the foot roll. When I press up, everything's working good. And if I wanted to, I now have this FK motion that I can manipulate the tip of my foot with. And really that's all there is to adding a toe lift to your rig. It's just adding this additional joint chain and saying, this is how I'm going to manipulate you. So really the main thing is incorporating this additional system into the system we already have. So go ahead and try it out. Animators love it. And if you run into issues, just let me know. Cheers.